Cold millionaire CEO is ice cold to everyone until a new maid walks in and he blushes. She gave her last dollar to a stranger for coffee. Didn't ask his name, didn't ask for thanks. Just smiled and walked into the rain with a baby in her arms. He never forgot her. Not when he signed $1 million deals. Not when he couldn't sleep in silk sheets. Not even when the world called him powerful. Because in his darkest moment, and she gave him something no one else did, a reason to live. Now he has everything. But the only thing he wants is the girl who gave without knowing he could give her everything. The coffee she never got to drink. The rain had been falling since morning, a soft, relentless drizzle that turned sidewalks to rivers and soaked through even the thickest coats. But she stood there anyway, one hand clutching the strap of a worn-out diaper bag, the other cradling the bundle pressed tight against her chest. The baby stirred, barely a month old, cheeks flushed and eyes sealed in sleep. His name was Emory, the only thing she had left that hadn't been taken, lost, or given away. Lena Carter had $16 in her pocket when she left home, 12 after the bus ticket, 11 once she'd bought the formula, one more gone on a pacifier that she later dropped on the sidewalk. That left her with 3. Enough, maybe, for a cup of coffee, enough to pretend for one small moment that she was just another girl waiting for a bus and not someone who had no place left to return to. The Greyhound station was quiet, only the buzz of flickering lights and the occasional murmur of other late-night travelers. Most people kept their eyes down. No one asked why a girl barely 20 stood in soaked sneakers rocking a newborn beneath her coat. No one cared, except one. He sat on the far bench, a man in a perfectly cut suit that didn't belong in this part of town. His tie was loosened, his jaw unshaven. There was something shattered in the way he sat, elbows on knees, hands laced together like he was holding something in. Or trying not to fall apart. Lena saw it, noticed the tremor in his hand as he pressed his thumb against his temple. The way he blinked hard at the wall like he was trying not to cry. Rich men didn't usually look like that. She hesitated, then walked to the vending machine near him, counted her coins again. She could buy one coffee, just one. She didn't even drink coffee, not really. But it was warm, and she needed warm. She looked over at the man again. He hadn't moved. He looked cold, alone, like he had nowhere to go, same as her. Without thinking, she fed her last dollar into the machine, hit the button twice, and waited until 2 paper cups clunked into the tray. She took one, the other she placed quietly beside him on the bench. "You look like you need it more than I do," she said softly. He looked up, blue eyes bloodshot and stunned. He didn't speak. "I didn't poison it, if that's what you're wondering," she added, offering a crooked smile. A second passed, then 2. He took the cup, his hand brushing hers, ice cold. "Thank you," he whispered, voice hoarse, like he hadn't used it in hours. She nodded, shifted Emory against her shoulder. "Take care, okay?" And just like that, she walked away. She never told him her name, never asked his. By the time her bus pulled into the station, the coffee had gone cold in her hand. She tossed it in the bin before climbing the steps. And the man with the haunted eyes? He never boarded. 5 years later. The Sterling Tower stretched 34 floors above downtown Seattle, all steel and glass and silence. Inside, Graham Sterling sat at the head of a conference table filled with people who spoke too loudly, smiled too wide, and made deals worth more than most houses. He nodded when he had to, signed when needed, but his mind had not been in the room for weeks. He hadn't slept more than 2 hours a night in nearly a decade. Not since the night everything fell apart. And then came her. He didn't see her walk in. It was a child who entered first, no older than 5, with wild dark curls and a name tag that read, Emory. The child had drawn something on a crumpled sheet of printer paper, a picture of a coffee cup, and next to it a woman. The receptionist laughed politely. "Who's that, sweetie?" "I'm Mom," Emory beamed. "She says, coffee saved our life." Graham stood. It wasn't until the mother followed her son in, clipboard in hand, eyes full of quiet worry, that his breath stopped. Her hair was damp from the drizzle outside. She wore jeans, scuffed sneakers, and a gray hoodie 2 sizes too big. But he knew her. He remembered the way she'd placed the coffee beside him like it was a treasure. Remembered the weight of her kindness. She hadn't known who he was. Not that night, not now. But Graham Sterling, CEO, billionaire, man who once nearly stepped off the edge of a bridge, had never forgotten the girl who gave him warmth when he had nothing but cold. And she still didn't know what she saved. Chapter 1. The Girl Who Never Asked for Help. There are moments so quiet you can hear your own heartbeat. That's what Lena noticed first about the Sterling Tower. It wasn't just tall, it was silent in a way that made you feel out of place. Too loud, too human. She held Emory's hand a little tighter as they stepped off the elevator into the marbled lobby, her stomach twisting the way it always did in expensive buildings. There were no fingerprints on the glass, no chipped corners on the tile. Even the receptionist looked carved from polished steel. "This is where we meet the people who picked your drawing," she whispered to Emory, forcing cheer into her voice. Her son beamed. He didn't notice the way she stood on the very edge of the rug, unsure if she was allowed to step further. His joy didn't carry fear, only wonder. The contest had been a fluke. Emory's preschool had submitted a Draw Your Favorite Moment entry to a campaign called More Than a Moment, run by Sterling Media's outreach team. Emory had drawn a woman handing coffee to a man. The crayon colors were smudged, but the feeling was there. She had no idea that simple drawing would lead them here. No idea it would lead them to him. The door to the inner suite opened with a quiet click, and a woman in a slate gray blazer stepped out. Sharp chin, high heels, clipboard. She looked like she'd never spilled coffee in her life. "Miss Carter?" she asked, glancing over Lena without expression. "And this is my son, Emory." The woman nodded. "Mr. Sterling will see you now. Follow me." The 32nd floor was unlike anything Lena had ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped the room in light. Modern art dotted the walls. Desks gleamed like they had never known dust. People in smart clothes moved silently, eyes fixed on screens. And at the end of the hall, beyond a frosted glass door, was him. Mr. Sterling. She didn't recognize him at first, not the way he looked now. Tailored navy shirt, sleeves rolled back to the forearms. Watch that looked like it cost more than her rent. He stood behind a long glass table, reviewing documents, his back to them. Until Emory's voice rang out. "Hey, that's the coffee man." Graham turned. His expression didn't change much. Not the way most people would have. No startled smile, no flash of surprise. Just stillness. As if this exact moment had been waiting in the wings for years. "You remember me?" Emory asked, stepping forward. "I drew the thing. You liked it?" "I did," Graham said, kneeling to meet the boy's eyes. "It reminded me of something real." He looked up then, straight at Lena. She froze. Something in his gaze was too steady, too familiar. But they met. She searched his face, unsure why her chest tightened. His voice, something about it made her feel like she was standing in that bus station again. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I'm Graham. You must be Emory's mom." Lena nodded. "Lena Carter." There was a pause. He nodded too. They sat in a side lounge just off his office. Velvet chairs, low lighting, a tray of untouched biscotti on the coffee table. Emory swung his legs as he chatted with Olivia, the assistant, across the room. Graham poured tea for Lena without asking. "No cream, 1 sugar." She blinked. "I did you?" "I remembered," he said simply. She furrowed her brow. "We've met?" His lips lifted in the faintest curve. "Once. A long time ago." She searched his face again. Still nothing came. Not until he said, "Greyhound Station, Oregon." Lena's breath caught. No, it couldn't be. But it was. The man she gave her coffee to. The stranger who looked like he hadn't slept in days. the man she forgot because she had to survive. "It was you," she whispered. He nodded. "You gave me something that night I hadn't felt in a long time." "A bean?" He smiled, genuine now. "Hope?" Lena looked down at her tea. She didn't know what to say. Didn't know what she was supposed to do in the presence of someone like him. Let alone someone who clearly remembered her for 5 years, while she'd forgotten his face entirely. "This campaign," she began. "I don't really know what you want from us." Graham looked toward Emory, who was showing Olivia his drawing again. "I want people to see what kindness looks like," he said. "Not the curated version, the real thing. You gave something to someone when you had nothing. That's the story. That's what the world needs." Lena shook her head. "I'm not a story, Mr. Sterling. I'm just trying to raise my kid without losing my job." He leaned forward, voice quieter. "I'm not asking you to become something you're not. I'm asking you to let the world see someone who didn't turn away." She looked at him again. He wasn't smiling now. He looked tired, like that night at the bus station still lived in his bones. "You really remembered me all this time?" she asked softly. He nodded once. "I never forgot." She swallowed. Neither did she, not the night, not the cold, not the silence that followed. Just the face. Until now. Chapter 2. The Contract Coffee. Lena had never been in a place that smelled like success before. The Sterling Tower Cafe wasn't just a coffee shop, it was a curated experience. Marble counters, live succulents in copper pots, baristas who smiled with the kind of ease that came from knowing they belonged. "She didn't," Olivia answered. Lena stood in line, feeling the awkward weight of borrowed confidence. Her jeans were clean, her sweater soft if a little faded, but still, she felt like a charity case who'd wandered into a designer showroom. "Your drink's covered," the barista said, nodding politely. "Mr. Sterling has a tab." "Of course he does." She took her tea and scanned the room. Graham sat at a corner table near the frosted windows. He was in a gray button-down today, sleeves rolled back like yesterday, collar slightly askew like he couldn't quite bother with perfection. He looked up as she approached. "Thanks for coming," he said. "I didn't realize it was optional," His mouth twitched, like he respected the challenge. They sat. He waited until she'd taken her first sip before sliding a slim white folder across the table. "What's this?" she asked, wary. Pro? Short-term contract, 3 months?" She flipped it open. Pages of fine print and polished HR language. Her eyes landed on the pay. Her throat tightened. 3 months of this contract would cover nearly a year of rent. She looked up. "This is a mistake." "I'm not a model. I'm not even photogenic. I don't have a degree." He interrupted gently. "You're the point." She blinked. "You're what authenticity looks like," he said. "We're launching a campaign about real generosity, real people, and real stories. Yours matters." She exhaled slowly. "You're offering me a job because I gave you coffee." He shook his head. "I'm offering you this because I believe the world needs to know people like you exist." She stared at him, unsure whether to feel flattered or insulted. "You don't even know me," she said, voice low. "I know enough," he replied, "and I'd like to know the rest." Her eyes narrowed. "What's in this for you?" The question hung like smoke. He met her gaze, unflinching. "You're the first person in 10 years who was kind to me without needing something in return. Maybe this isn't about business. Maybe this is just me trying to return the favor." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Lena closed the folder. "I'll think about it," she said. No pressure. But there was. She could feel it under her skin. Not from him, but from life. Later that night, Lena stood at the sink, scrubbing a plate that didn't need scrubbing. The contract lay open on the counter. Emory was asleep on the couch, curled beneath the same blanket she'd wrapped him in that night at the station. She thought of the money, the opportunity, the look on Graham's face when he said, I'd like to know the rest. And for the first time in a long time, she wanted to let someone try. She signed. The next morning. When she arrived at Sterling Tower the next day, Olivia greeted her not with the cool detachment of before, but with a quiet nod of "Mr. Sterling's waiting," she said. This time, Lena didn't flinch as she stepped into the private conference room. Graham stood, walked toward her, and held out a small box. "What's this?" she asked. "Welcome gift," he said. Inside was a custom-made keychain, a tiny coffee cup engraved with the words, "Start here." Her eyes stung. He didn't try to hug her, didn't reach out, just stood there quietly like he understood the weight of moments. "I don't know where this is going," she whispered. "Neither do I," he said, "but I'm glad it's with you." Chapter 3. The promotion that broke everyone. The first week was surprisingly smooth. Lena showed up early, answered every call, smiled when she didn't feel like it, and did everything she could to blend in with the Sterling media crowd. Still, she could feel the stares. Not cruel, just curious, like they were trying to place her in the blueprint of a place she didn't belong. And she didn't, really. She wasn't polished like the other women in the creative wing, didn't wear heels that clicked across the marble or blazers stitched to her exact measurements. Lena brought Emory's lunch in a thrifted tote bag and took her coffee with powdered creamer. But she listened, she learned. What she didn't expect was what came next. It happened on a Monday. The office was buzzing about the big rebranding pitch to Cross and Bay, a luxury hotel chain. It was supposed to be Renee's presentation. Renee, who had 10 years of agency experience and an MBA from Cornell, was the golden girl. But Graham had other plans. Lena didn't hear it from him. She found out like everyone else, in the all-staff email that hit inboxes at 8:42. Subject Q2 brand presentation. Lena Carter to lead proposal direction. At first she thought it was a typo. But then Olivia walked over, handed her a sleek black folder and simply said, "He's serious." Lena's face drained. She turned to Olivia in disbelief. "Why would he do that?" "We trust your instinct," Olivia said, then added quietly, "which might be more than I can say for the rest of the floor." By noon, the whispers had started. In the break room, in the elevator, in the too polite way people smiled as she passed. It's just here because he owes her something. Probably slept with him. Look at the pay bump. Single mom, desperate for a way out? Classic PR move. She heard one of them laugh and say, "Graham finally got a real woman, poor, pretty, and pliable." Lena stood in the stall of the women's restroom, back pressed to the cool metal, listening to the voices echo off tile. She didn't cry. She just stood there until her hands stopped shaking. That afternoon, she delivered the pitch. Flawless, authentic, rooted in the story of kindness, a story she knew too well. She didn't use buzzwords or inflated promises. She just spoke about what it means to feel safe and how a brand could offer something more than a room. It could offer refuge, like that cup of coffee once did. When she finished, the room was silent. Graham was the first to clap, then Olivia, then the client. Applause filled the room like oxygen. But in the hallway, when the doors closed behind them, Renee caught her wrist. "You don't belong here," she whispered. Lena didn't answer, just held Renee's stare a second too long before walking away. That night, Lena didn't go straight home. She sat in her car in the parking garage, rain tapping against the windshield like the world itself was weighing in. When she was 16, she'd wanted to be a writer. Not famous, just honest. She'd fill pages with little moments, conversations overheard in diners, the feeling of rain in her sleeves, the loneliness between footsteps at night. But now, she was just tired. Being the woman people judged without knowing was exhausting. Her phone buzzed, a text from Graham. "Come up. 34th floor, only if you want." She hesitated, then climbed out of the car. The executive lounge was empty. A wall of windows overlooked the glittering city. Rain blurred the skyline, softening every harsh edge into watercolor. Graham stood at the counter, making coffee. When he turned, he was already holding a second mug. "Did you know," she asked, "that they'd say those things?" He didn't pretend to be confused. "I knew it was possible," he said quietly. She sat on the couch, fingers tightening around the mug. "I think I'm some kind of charity project." "You're not." "No, but I feel like one." He sat across from her. "I didn't promote you because of what you did for me that night, Lena. I promoted you because you understand something no one else here does. How to make people feel seen." She looked away, throat tightening. "I don't need saving." "I know. I need to protect my son. I can't be caught in someone else's narrative." Graham nodded and reached into his blazer pocket and pulled out a small item. A press pass, branded with her name. Her official title, Director of Empathy and Narrative Branding. She blinked. "Thing's not real." "It is now." To pause. "Then, you can quit tomorrow, and I'll still fund your son's education." She looked up, stunned. "What?" "I set aside a scholarship. You don't owe me anything. I just wanted you to know. This was never conditional." Her voice dropped. "Why would you do that?" "'Cause that night in that station, I wasn't just tired, Lena. I wasn't just cold." He met her eyes, and for the first time, she saw it. Brief. Not polished, not corporate. "I was planning to disappear," he said. "You handed me coffee, and with it, a reason to stay one more night." Her breath caught. He hadn't just been lonely. He'd been done. Her hands trembled around the cup. "I didn't know?" "I never wanted you to." My silence fell. Then she whispered, "You should have told me." "I'm telling you now." She left the lounge quietly. Didn't say goodbye, didn't promise tomorrow. But in the elevator mirror, she saw her own face for the first time in a long while, and it didn't look like a girl trying to blend in. It looked like a woman who knew exactly who she was becoming. And even if the whole building whispered behind her back, they'd have to say it louder, because she wasn't hiding anymore. The rain knows the truth. It was nearly midnight when Lena stepped out into the rooftop parking lot. Seattle rain was different up high. It didn't just fall, it whispered, cold and endless, tracing down her collarbone like memory. The lights of the city blurred through it, golden and gray, and the wind pulled at her jacket like it was trying to carry her back to a version of herself she didn't want to be anymore. And she was tired. The kind of tired that didn't come from the body, but from the soul. Behind her, the elevator chimed. She didn't turn. "I thought you might be here," Graham's voice said. Lena didn't move. She kept her hands folded in front of her, eyes on the mist rising off the slick pavement. "Everyone's got their place," she murmured. "Some people drive off, others stay in the storm." He didn't speak, just walked beside her, not too close, not too far. "I didn't come up here to talk," she added. "I didn't come up here to fix anything." She gave a tired laugh. "That's good, because I'm not broken, just bent in a few places." The rain soaked through the shoulders of her coat. Graham didn't flinch from it. After a while, she asked the question that had been sitting in her chest since the beginning. "Why were you running from, that night at the station?" He hesitated. And quietly, "My father had just died." And she turned, surprised. "He left me everything. Companies, debt, a reputation I never wanted." His voice didn't crack, but it went hollow, like something had been scooped out of it. "I felt like I inherited an empire made of ash. I was alone, powerful, and nothing made sense. The night I met you, I wasn't headed home, I was headed toward disappearing." The words landed between them like raindrops on glass. Then, he continued, "you handed me a coffee. No name, no question, just kindness." He looked at her then. "You saved me, and I didn't even know your name." Lena's lips trembled, not because of the cold. "Do you know what I remember about that night?" she whispered. "That the cup was warm, and you didn't say a word. You just looked like you needed it." She paused. "I was so tired of being invisible, I thought, maybe it mattered." Graham reached into his coat pocket, pulled something out, small, paper-thin. "A receipt?" "On that very night." Elena's breath caught. "You kept it?" He nodded. "It's all I had of you." She took the crumpled slip, smoothed it with shaking hands. Faded ink. 2 items. Coffee $1, 0 cents. Coffee $1, 0 cents. The timestamp still visible. 12:03 a.m. A moment that saved a life. Tears blurred her vision. "I didn't know," she said. "I didn't want you to," he replied softly. "Not until now." A long silence followed. Rain curled around their feet. Then Lena spoke again. "I'm not good at trust," she said. I don't want to carry your life," Graham said. "I just want to walk beside it." Her eyes met his. And for the first time, she let someone see everything. All the pieces, all the fear, all the exhausted grace it took to hold herself together. She didn't say yes, didn't say no. She just whispered, "Thank you for not disappearing." And that was enough. For now. Chapter 5. The day Emory called him Dad. The sun broke through the clouds for the first time in days. It warmed the metal of the playground slides and lit up the wood chips like scattered gold. Emory's laugh rang across the park, louder than the traffic, louder than the world. Lena sat on a nearby bench, watching her son pretend to be a spaceship captain on the jungle gym. One hand around a paper coffee cup, the other tightening around a folded napkin she'd been meaning to throw away for 10 minutes. It wasn't a normal Saturday. Not when he was here too. Graham Sterling sat cross-legged in the grass, his dress shoes traded for sneakers, his shirt sleeves rolled up in surrender to the sunlight. He looked out of place, but not in the way Lena feared. In fact, it was the opposite. He looked comfortable. Emory leapt off the ladder and landed with a grin. "Did you see that, Mom? I didn't even fall." "I saw baby." Then he turned to Graham. "Did you see it too?" Graham nodded, smiling. "You're faster than I ever was." Emory considered that seriously. "Maybe 'cause I eat broccoli." Graham laughed. It was the first time Lena had heard him laugh like that. Not the polite chuckle of a CEO, the kind that comes from somewhere real. Emory bounded over and plopped down beside him. "I wish you were my dad," he said suddenly. Graham froze. Lena's heart stopped. She stood up, blood rushing to her ears. "Emory." But Graham looked up, calm, and gently raised a hand. "It's okay." Emily looked between them. "I didn't mean anything bad," he said quickly. You're nice, you listen, and when I drew that coffee cup, you got it." Lena knelt beside her son. "Sweetheart, you don't have to say things just to be nice." "I'm not," he insisted. "I just feel like he sees me, like you do." That silenced her. Because it was true. Graham hadn't tried to buy his way into Emory's life. No toys, no tricks. Just time, listening. And somehow, in that small way, he had become something constant. Later, on a quieter bench near the edge of the park, Lena and Graham sat in stillness while Emory chased birds in the grass. "You didn't mean it like that," Lena said, breaking the silence. "I know. It caught me off guard." "Me too," he admitted. "But not in the way you think." She glanced at him. He wasn't smiling anymore. "I never thought I'd be good at this," he said. "The idea of family, it always felt heavy, like a legacy I didn't want to carry." Pause. Today. I didn't feel afraid. I just felt seen. Lena's voice softened. He has that effect. And do you? She didn't answer. Instead, she whispered, "You didn't flinch when he called you Dad." "No," Graham said, "because, for a second, I wished I would." The truth landed like a breath between them. Not rushed, not forced. Just real. As the sun began to set, Randy ran back with a rock in his palm. "Look, it's heart-shaped." He handed it to Lena, then to Graham. Graham turned it over in his fingers. Lena reached out to take it, but Graham held on a second longer. "I'll keep this," he said to Emory. "If that's okay?" Emory beamed. "It's a lucky rock. Now you're in the club." "The club? Heart club. Only good people allowed." Lena watched the two of them, one small, one strong, and realized something she hadn't let herself feel in a long time. Say, much after 6. The birthday he didn't forget. Lena never celebrated her birthday. Not because she hated the idea, just because life had always found a way to forget it for her. She was used to it. Used to waking up to silence, to no texts, no cards, no candles. She told herself it didn't matter, that growing up meant not needing reminders that you existed. So when her birthday rolled around this year, she didn't expect anything. Certainly not from him. At the morning, the day began like any other. A stick-figure mom with glitter glued to the eyes. "Because you sparkle," he explained with a grin. Lena kissed the top of his head and tucked it into the fridge with a magnet. She brewed coffee, took a call from a client, paid the overdue electric bill. And when the knock came at 9:42, she thought it was the mailman. It wasn't. It was Graham, holding a single cupcake in a brown bakery box. No balloons, no ribbon. Just a candle, just a look. "Happy birthday," he said softly. Lena stared at him. "How did you—" "You mentioned it once," he said, "back in the cafe. You said your birthday always landed on rainy days, and I remembered thinking, maybe someone should bring the sun instead." She opened the door wider. He stepped inside, slowly, like he wasn't sure he should. The afternoon. They sat on the floor with Emory, playing card games and eating lunch from mismatched plates. Graham didn't bring gifts, just conversation, just presence. He asked her about books she used to love, music she hadn't listened to in years, dreams she'd buried so deep she forgot they were still hers. At one point, she laughed so hard she choked on her coffee, and he smiled like it was the first time he'd seen something beautiful and alive. Later, when Emory napped, Graham pulled something else from his coat pocket. Not wrapped, just wrapped in thought. A necklace. Simple, a brass heart pressed with the letter E. Lena blinked. "You didn't have to." "I didn't," he said, "but I wanted to." She reached for it, hands unsteady. "It's not just his initial," Graham added. "It's yours too, for everything you are." She looked up at him. And for a moment, the wall she always kept up cracked. That night, they climbed the narrow steps to the rooftop of her building. Nothing fancy, just broken planters and a view of the city trying its best to glow. Graham lit the candle on the cupcake, held it out to her. "Make a wish." She smiled softly. "I stopped doing that years ago." "Try," he said. She stared at the flame, then closed her eyes. She didn't wish for money, or a miracle, or a mansion. She just wished, for once, not to feel so alone in the world. Then she blew the candle out. He watched her, quietly. "Did you get your wish?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Because when the wind carried her hair across her face and his hand gently brushed it back, Lena felt something she hadn't in years. Held, not with arms, but with understanding. Before he left, Graham paused at the apartment door. "Why didn't you tell anyone it was your birthday?" he asked. "Because I didn't want to be disappointed if no one cared." "I care." She looked at him, and this time she didn't look away. "I know," she whispered. Then slowly and possibly, she leaned in, not for a kiss, but for closeness, for quiet. Their foreheads touched, and for one still, wordless moment, it felt like healing. Chapter 7. The tabloid ruined everything. Lena woke up smiling. She didn't remember the last time that had happened. The morning sunlight warmed the edge of her blanket. Emory was humming in the kitchen, pouring cereal with more milk than sense, and tucked under her pillow was the heart-shaped necklace Graham had given her. Last night had been simple, ordinary, magical. A birthday, a cupcake, a man who showed up, not with wealth but with presence. She never imagined everything could shatter before noon. 10:03 a.m. Her phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "You need to see this, now." Anna clicked the link, and the headline hit her like a slap. "Single mom seduces billionaire CEO, a Cinderella con job. Exclusive private surveys. We have a darkened old building." Her hands trembled as she scrolled. Blurry images. Her and Graham leaving the rooftop, a cropped still of him brushing hair from her face. The worst one, Emory sitting beside Graham on the playground bench with the caption, "Ting his air." Lena's breath left her body. She felt sick. 10:17 IEM, Sterling Tower. Lena stormed into the building, heart pounding. She could feel the stairs before the elevator even opened. Nose flicked up, fingers pointed. Renee passed her in the hallway and gave a sugar-sweet smile. "Guess some women have other qualifications, huh?" "Renee?" Renee pushed past her mother, getting more confident by the second. Lena didn't respond. She went straight to the executive floor. Straight to him. Graham's office. He stood at the window, phone to his ear, issuing orders like a storm in a suit. When he saw her, he hung up. "I'm fixing it," he said. Her voice was low. "You told me I mattered." "You do. Then why didn't you say anything in the press release? You defended your brand, your company, not me." He froze. "What do you know what they're calling me? Online, in forums, on school blogs?" She took a step back, her throat thick. "My son was mocked this morning. 5 years old. Asked if his daddy bought his mommy. Do you understand what that feels like?" Graham reached for her. She flinched. He dropped his hand. "I wanted to protect you," he said quietly, "not drag you into the fire. You don't get to decide how I burn." Silence filled the space between them. Then she said the one thing that cracked him completely. "You're just like them, Graham. Quiet when it counts, loud when it's safe." She walked out. Sterling Tower. "Huh?" Hammers flashed. Reporters shouted. "Lena, are you pregnant? Is this how you climb the ladder? Does the CEO support single mothers or sleep with them?" Lena didn't speak. She kept her head high. But as she turned the corner into the alley behind the bakery, she let the tears fall. Not because she was weak, but because even strong women break when the world punishes them for existing too brightly. That night, Emory lay asleep on the couch, arms curled around a stuffed bear. Lena sat at the kitchen table, staring at the necklace. "Already?" Julie asked immediately. But she didn't wear it either. Somewhere between love and silence, she had lost something. Maybe it was trust. Maybe it was him. Chapter 8. She left without saying goodbye. The apartment was too quiet. The lights were off, the sofa bare. The fridge hummed alone in the corner, holding nothing but a half-empty bottle of juice and an old container of leftover noodles. Lena Carter was gone. Graham stood in the center of the living room, staring at the void she left behind. No note, no message, just a clean table, a folded blanket, and a refrigerator magnet holding a single crayon drawing. It was a coffee cup, split in two. Underneath, in a child's handwriting, "Fix it, please." His throat burned. Sterling Tower. Late night. Where did she go? He asked Olivia for the fourth time. The assistant replied, softer this time. She just cleaned out her desk, left her badge, no confrontation, just walked out. Graham pressed his palms into his eyes. I thought I was protecting her. You were protecting your image, Olivia said quietly. He looked up. I've worked for you for 6 years, she continued, and I've never seen you hesitate. Until her. He didn't answer. She placed a folder on his desk. Marketing wants to release a new statement. Do you want me to sign it for you? He stared at the words. Sterling Media does not comment on personal relationships. We remain committed to inclusivity, empowerment, and family values. His pen hovered. Then he said, no. Olivia blinked. No. He stood. More statements. No more PR spin. I'm done hiding behind silence. 2 days later, outside a quiet cafe. Graham didn't need a GPS to find her. She'd once told him about the town her grandmother lived in, a tiny place with one school, one post office, and a corner cafe that made cinnamon bread worth crying over. He found her there, behind the counter, apron dusted with flour, hair tied in a messy bun. She didn't see him at first. She was laughing with a customer, wiping her hands on a towel, her smile brighter than he remembered. Not because she was happier, but because she was surviving. He stood by the door for a long moment, unsure. But then Emory spotted him. He bolted toward Graham, arms wide. A coffee man, he shouted. Lena turned at the sound. Their eyes met. She didn't smile. But she didn't look away. Back at the table. Graham sat across from her, hands wrapped around a chipped mug. I'm sorry, he said. I know. I was afraid that if I claimed you, it would ruin you. You ruined me by not claiming me. Silent. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out something small. The receipt? Faded, torn at the corner, but still intact. You saved me once, he said, and I never asked why. She looked at him, eyes unreadable. Because I knew what broken looked like, she whispered, and I didn't want someone else to feel it alone. He nodded, then placed the receipt on the table, next to a napkin. On the napkin, he had written, I don't want to disappear. I want to belong. Pause. Let me come back, he whispered. What? Elise asked him curiously. The life we haven't built yet. Her eyes filled with tears. But she said nothing. Not yet. Chapter 9. The Coffee Cup Surprise. The cafe smelled like cinnamon and beginnings. It had been open just 3 months, but people already called it Lena's place. A hand-painted sign hung above the counter, crooked on purpose. Every table had fresh flowers in chipped glass jars. No one rushed here. They lingered, laughed, wrote things they were afraid to say out loud. Lena stood behind the counter at 6:45 a.m., arranging scones in the pastry case, while Emory folded napkins with the seriousness of a bank clerk. Do you think Dad will come in today? He asked suddenly. Lena paused. Emory. I mean Graham, he corrected, but also, he feels like Dad. She didn't answer. Not because she didn't feel the same, but because the ache of almost still lived behind her ribs. At 7:12 a.m., the doorbell chimed. She looked up and froze. But there he was. Same eyes. Same quiet presence. But something was different now. He looked human. Not the polished CEO. Not the man in tailored armor. Just Graham, holding a folded receipt in one hand and a takeout cup in the other. He stepped forward and placed the coffee on the counter between them. But she stared at it, but then noticed something. Written in Sharpie across the cup were the words, "The girl who saved me. Again." Beneath it, a taped receipt, folded, familiar. She peeled it off with trembling hands. On the back, scrawled in ink, "You gave me coffee when I had nothing. Let me give you forever. If not today, then whenever you're ready." Tears pooled in her eyes, not the kind that broke you, the kind that washed something clean. Later that morning, they sat outside, beneath the striped awning, watching the city wake up. He didn't ask her for an answer. She didn't ask him to explain the silence between them. But when he reached across the table, she let him take her hand. And that was the beginning of again. Not dramatic, not loud, just real, like coffee on a quiet morning. Chapter 10. Love is a beautiful mess. The wedding wasn't perfect. The folding chairs didn't match. The flower girl forgot to toss petals. The ring bearer tripped twice. The cake was homemade and slightly crooked. But no one cared. Because it was real. Because the bride laughed when her veil caught on the cafe's back door. Because the groom cried when she walked down the path holding Emory's hand. And because in a world obsessed with staged photos and clean lines, this was messy, beautiful truth. At the ceremony, they stood beneath an arch made of driftwood and daisies, sunlight soaking into their skin. Emory acted as best man, holding the rings in a little velvet pouch he'd tied to his belt with shoelaces. The officiant, a retired teacher from the neighborhood, smiled gently and said, "We're not here to celebrate perfection. We're here to witness presence." Lena's vows were simple. "I never needed a man to rescue me, but I did need someone to see me. And you did. Not when I was polished, but when I was pouring coffee I couldn't afford." Graham's voice cracked as he began. "I've closed billion-dollar deals, owned private jets, signs my name in gold. But the only thing that ever made me feel rich was the day you handed me a cup of coffee, without asking who I was." Camping paused. "I haven't stopped drinking it since." The kiss. It wasn't cinematic. He stepped on her dress. She laughed into his chest. He whispered, "Sorry," against her lips. But when they kissed, everything else disappeared. Even the crowd, even the bakery behind them, even the hard years, the lost time, the silence between their last goodbye and this new hello. All gone, placed with breath, belonging, and the kind of love that feels like exhaling after holding it in for years. The reception. There was no DJ, just Emory's playlist from a cracked iPad and a Bluetooth speaker that cut out every few songs. Their first dance wasn't rehearsed. They swayed beneath cafe string lights, barefoot in the grass. At one point, Emory shouted, "You're stepping on her foot, Graham." Graham replied, "Then I'm doing it right. We said real love, not ballroom love." The guests laughed. Lena did too. And as they twirled awkwardly, off beat, off rhythm, completely at home, she leaned in and whispered, "This mess is everything I ever wanted. What coffee taught us about forever." Some people fall in love with grand gestures. A rooftop dinner, a diamond ring, a sunset proposal on a Paris balcony. But for Lena, it started with coffee. $1 she could barely afford. A man who looked like he hadn't been seen in years. In a moment that asked nothing but gave everything. She didn't save his life with a kiss. But she saved it with kindness. No promise, no name, just warmth in a world that had gone cold. And that was enough to begin. 1 year later. The cafe lights flicker low, the dishes are done, the sign is flipped to closed. Graham wipes down a table. Emory hums while finishing his math homework. Lena watches from the doorway, arms folded, heart full. But they still get things wrong. He forgets to take the trash out. She still talks in her sleep. Emory still mixes up sugar and salt. But somehow, it all works. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. Love isn't always a lightning bolt. Sometimes it's a slow cup of coffee across a plastic table. Sometimes it's showing up when you don't have... Sometimes it's not knowing how the story ends, only that you want to be there for every chapter. So if you're waiting for someone to rescue you, maybe look again. Sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin when no one's looking. Have you ever been kind to someone and didn't know it changed everything? Share your story below. Not for likes, not for views. Just because your story, like Lena's, might remind someone that love still exists in this world. And maybe that's how we save each other. That's one small act at a time.